Welcome to Deep Dive. In this episode, we talk about the notes of Edgar Cayce, about fairies, elves, elementals, and gnomes, a compilation of his extracts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're venturing into, well, a pretty fascinating and often unseen world. The realm of fairies, elves, elementals, and gnomes.
Yeah, and this isn't just us pulling things out of thin air. We're actually taking a deep dive into materials you, our listeners, shared with us. Specifically, that compilation titled Fairies, Elves, Elementals, Gnomes, Edgar Cayce. So it's really your curiosity leading the way here.
Exactly. And our mission really is just to unpack what these sources reveal about these, well, often unseen entities. We're not aiming to prove or disprove anything, more just to understand the perspectives, the experiences presented in these readings and accounts. Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with Edgar Cayce's own childhood. Those early experiences seem pretty foundational.
Definitely. The compilation kicks off with these stories of young Eddie Cayce having interactions that, well, most people would find extraordinary. There's that early one about him playing in the barn.
Oh, yeah.
And telling his aunt about all the children he played with there. He even mentioned his grandfather who had passed away.
Right. And his aunt, quite understandably, just brushed it off. Imagination. Even called it wicked because, his grandfather had been gone for 6 years. But here's the twist, isn't it?
The twist is that Eddie insisted his mother saw these children too.
Which just makes you wonder, doesn't it, about childhood perception? Maybe kids are just more open to experiences we as adults kind of filter out.
Well, when his mother was asked, she actually did confirm seeing the children Eddie described. Couldn't identify them, though. She found it unusual, something she'd read about, apparently, but never expected to witness herself, her reaction. She just prayed, trusted it would be okay for Eddie. So yeah, this theme starts early, a child's experience of a reality maybe beyond what we normally see.
And later the family moved, right? More rural, bordering a wood.
Yes, and that connection with nature, it seemed to sort of amplify things for young Eddie. He even made a special little retreat for himself out there.
And it was in that setting, wasn't it? After studying the Bible.
Uh-huh. Particularly the story of Samson. That's when he reported seeing a flesh in white light. And after that, he started experiencing an inner voice. He felt that was the beginning of his intuitive abilities.
So you see a potential link there. Nature, focused intention, like studying the Bible, and then this development of intuitive senses.
It certainly suggests that, yeah. And there's also a letter Cayce wrote later reflecting on being really young, maybe 18, 20 months old.
Wow, that young.
Yeah. He remembered playing in his mother's garden with an unseen companion, and he vividly recalled the day his mother asked the playmate's name, and poof, the child just vanished. Left his mother quite puzzled, as you can imagine.
Another early memory reinforcing this theme of unseen companions.
And these experiences didn't stop. When they moved to a new country home, Cayce remembered playing with these unseen friends in two specific spots. An old graveyard.
A graveyard as a playground.
Apparently. An old graveyard with cedar trees and also a straw stack across the road. He just saw them as places to play.
The straw stack story is amazing, though, because his mother actually saw children sliding down it with him.
Exactly. And when she called out, asking their names, he realized he didn't know them. That shared visual experience, mother and child, it adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does.
Then, around age 6 or 7, living near a small wood, his interactions sort of evolved. He described learning to talk with the trees.
Talk with trees.
That's what he said. And playing with smaller, unseen companions he called Elves of the trees in this little bower he'd built. He even felt they were like the angels or hosts from Genesis. Trying to fit it into a framework he understood, I suppose.
It's actually quite touching that Cayce later saw these childhood experiences as sacred. He mentioned that as he got older, these visions just faded, became rare.
Yeah, which raises that question again, doesn't it? Are we more open as kids? Does that perception narrow as we age, as our reality gets more fixed?
Makes you think.
And there's this one incredible account from a reading. Cayce was unconscious, trying to locate minerals on his old property. And he started talking eloquently about these early encounters.
Really? While unconscious?
Yes. Witnesses said the atmosphere felt really strange, otherworldly. They even sensed a sort of dialogue between Cayce and these unseen entities who seemed to be like longing for him to come back and join them.
Wow. Like a connection that lingered. A deep, forgotten friendship kind of resurfacing.
Something like that. It's quite profound.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Fast forward in time to something quite different. That Polaroid photograph incident at the ARE.
Ah, yes, that's a really intriguing one. Comes from Joan Grasser, who used to be a director there. She tells this story about a chemist, David Abereg,
Right.
taking Polaroid photos of a camellia bush. And the pictures, they apparently showed these tiny little men, light green suits, red bow ties, little top hats, cherubic faces. It's not just a story. There's this tangible element, photos.
And it wasn't just one blurry image.
No, apparently several leaves in the photos showed these, as Grasser put it, adorable little beings smiling back. And Hughlin Cayce himself saw them in the pictures. He also noted the leaves on the actual bush were moving when the photos were taken.
But nobody else saw the beings directly, only in the photos.
Exactly. None of the other staff there could see them with their own eyes, only the camera picked them up. So yeah, technology capturing something the human eye missed.
That really makes you question the limits of our senses, doesn't it? And whether technology can sometimes pick up on, well, aspects of reality we just don't normally perceive. What might be just outside our usual range.
Precisely. It's a real head scratcher.
Okay, let's pivot again. Let's explore another perspective in the compilation, this idea of guardians and helpers of nature. PMH Atwater talks about this. It offers a different lens, maybe.
It does. Atwater shares some really compelling stories pointing towards like a conscious interaction with nature. There's one about a farmer, Mrs. Sanday. She apparently got amazing harvests year after year, even though she didn't follow conventional farming methods. And the rumors were she worked with angels and fairies.
So this idea of partnership, yielding results.
Right. A co-creative relationship. Atwater also mentions George Washington Carver, the famous inventor.
Of course. Peanut butter guy, right? Well, much more than that.
Much more. He often talked about his early morning walks in the woods being his main source of inspiration, and he spoke of communicating with angels and fairies. He saw nature as a direct link to knowledge.
He called a flower a connection to infinity, didn't he? And mentioned that still small voice that calls up the fairies.
He did, believed his inventions were gifts for everyone, and he always credited nature as his teacher. It really highlights the importance of being receptive, appreciative, if you want to access that wisdom.
The compilation then brings up the Findhorn Gardens in Scotland, another example of this co-creative idea.
A really striking one. A community there intentionally tried to connect with what they called divas and nature spirits, basically angels and fairies, and they achieved incredible plant growth in Scotland. Not the easiest climate.
Like they tapped into some kind of unseen support system?
Seems that way. And now the Findhorn Foundation and Cluny Hill College actually teach about these intelligences, about working consciously with these perceived forces. So it's moved beyond just anecdotes into like a practice.
And there's also Paralandra, the research center in Virginia.
Yeah, Clarence McHale's Small Rights Place. McHale reportedly communicates with voices from the woods divas, nature spirits. And apparently their soil vitality is off the charts. Again, a tangible result linked to this kind of communication.
So Atwater's summary is basically, nature's ready to share secrets, but we need to ask, listen quietly, and then act on what we hear. With discernment, of course.
Exactly. It's a call for a more active, respectful dialogue with nature.
A compilation even gives definitions. Divas are shining ones, architects linked to God.
And nature spirits, or fairies, are denser, the workers tending plants, animals, minerals, so like a hierarchy of helpers.
And it suggests ways to connect. Meditation for divas, maybe?
Yeah, meditation, clear intention, listening without expectation. For nature spirits, it's more about intention, being receptive, trusting, making specific requests, even being playful, imagining a relaxed connection.
Which brings us back nicely to the Edgar Cayce readings themselves, the core of the compilation. And there are loads of interesting bits about elementals and unseen helpers.
There really are. Reading 1298.1 has that powerful analogy. As elementals are the warp and woof of materiality, so divinity is the warp and woof of spirituality.
So elementals as fundamental building blocks of the physical world.
That's the idea presented there. Just like the spiritual realm has its own foundation.
And reading 3189-3 offers that comforting thought.
Yeah.
Every person has a guardian angel.
Yeah. Ever the guardian angel stands before the throne of God for each individual. Reinforces that idea of personal spiritual guidance.
Then you get readings about people naturally drawn to the mystical. Like reading 2316-1, describing someone as a dreamer of dreams, where good fairies or unusual circumstances bring proper returns. A positive view of unseen help.
Right. And sometimes it's framed more simply. Reading 257-87 talks about little brownies guiding someone in business.
Like intuition. a gut feeling.
Could be interpreted that way, yeah. A charming way to put it.
Reading 2641-1 is interesting too, about someone seen as mischievous as a child.
Because they were trying to understand things of a spiritual nature, things as would appear to others to be only fairy tales. It even links this to Neptune's influence, plant life, flowers, as a cosmic layer.
But there are warnings too, right?
Right.
Reading 694 to cautions against using elementals to manipulate relationships.
Definitely. Emphasizes being true to yourself, showing love directly. There's an ethical dimension here.
Okay, so the compilation then dives into specific cases from the readings, children and adults with these kinds of experiences.
Yeah, these give you a real sense of how Cayce approached these things. There's a 7-year-old girl reading 1911-1. She could see and hear things others couldn't.
And the advice wasn't to shut it down.
No, quite the opposite. Don't belittle it, guide it, use it for mental and soul growth. And interestingly, her past life was mentioned as Peri in Persia, someone like a fairy bringing peace.
Wow, then a 2-year-old boy.
Reading 2148-7, intuitive forces from a past life as an Essene alchemist, apparently. Predicted he'd be interested in mysteries, tell fairy tales, linking past and present again.
And the 4-year-old prodigy, reading 2547-1, connected to elementals, fairies.
Yeah, the advice there was, don't question his sources, just record them. Guide him with spiritual truths from the Bible and his past lives, Thomas Campbell, Elijah, Elisha, even Noah, a huge scope. There was also a caution about strong drink later in life.
And a 14-year-old girl seeing fairies and gnomes.
Reading 5359-1, advised to use these experiences for her art, but again, warnings about overindulgence, alcohol, past lives in Persia and Egypt mentioned. Patterns across lifetimes seem to be a theme.
What about the adults?
Well, there's reading 338-3, a 41-year-old woman, psychic, influenced by numerology, warned against being guided by just any entity, told to connect with the infinite. Her creativity was linked to depicting beauty she saw, maybe in visions or nature.
And it mentions elementals, gnomes, fairies, angels could be used by the maker as guides.
Yes, that possibility had raised. Then, reading 531-2, a 40-year-old man, it notes each soul has its angel, its gnome, as a guide. Advised him to listen to his inner voice because he was sensitive.
And a follow-up reading mentions gnome things coming up under ether.
Yeah, reading 531-3 suggests altered consciousness might open awareness to these realms. But again, the advice is they can be aids, not the self. They're not you.
Then there's business advice for a 62-year-old man. Listen to voices from within, or brownies.
Reading 1265-2, instead of external mediums. And the next reading, 1265-3, clarifies brownies. Explains them as manifestations of elementals, entities who haven't entered materiality. It says brownies, pixies, fairies, gnomes aren't elementals themselves, but represent elements as distinct entities, kind of like how humans are materialized entities. A bit complex, but it offers a specific terminology.
Okay, that's a lot from the readings themselves. But then there's this section with letters between Cayce and Anna, Beatrice C.
Ah, yes. This adds such a personal human touch. They apparently shared childhood experiences of playing with the little folk, believed she was a reincarnated playmate.
Their letters sound really touching, remembering playing together with unseen friends.
They do. Cayce even gave her advice on meditating with a candle and a purple background, suggesting she might be able to see the little folk again. Shows he believed it was possible to reconnect.
He had a dream about little Dell being one of their playmates, confirmed in a reading.
Yes, that interplay between dreams, memory, intuition comes up again. And they reminisced about playing house, about the little church in the wildwood, violets in the woods, these lovely sensory details.
Cayce also dreamed of going back to their childhood home, seeing it just as it was when they played with the little folks at the hayrick.
Yeah, these memories were clearly very vivid for him, and they shared this really significant memory about an island.
The island where they built a playhouse with help from the little folk? Saw fairies and pixies for the first time?
Exactly, made a childhood pledge there. Kept going back even when told not to. That island seems like a really special, formative place in their shared experience.
And finally, Casey's own dream, reading 294-128. Being a boy again, seeing the fairies he used to play with.
Uh-huh. And recognizing people he knew as an adult among them. But interestingly, the interpretation of that dream was actually a warning about his physical health.
So even these seemingly whimsical experiences could carry deeper personal meanings.
It seems so, on multiple levels.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive into fairies, elves, elementals, gnomes, through these particular sources, what are the main takeaways for you, for our listener?
Well, I think the materials you shared, they consistently present this theme of potential interaction between our world and unseen beings. Whether it's childhood playmates, perceived guides in nature, or even influences in practical life, these accounts, personal stories, psychic readings, letters, they offer a pretty unique perspective on reality, don't they?
They certainly do.
Yeah.
And it's crucial, as we said, to remember these are the accounts and interpretations within these specific sources. We've explored them to understand the perspectives, not to say this is definitively real.
Right. Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you, the listener. How might hearing these accounts, these different viewpoints, shift your own perspective on the natural world or on the possibility of unseen influences? Could those gut feelings, those moments of connection with nature, could they have roots deeper than we usually think?
It definitely gives you something to mull over. And if this has sparked your curiosity and you want to dig deeper, well, the Edgar Cayce readings are vast. And there's work by people like PMH Atwater, the Feinhorn Foundation. Lots to explore. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.